In NFL Week 4 action, New Orleans Saints 0-3 on the season travel to Buffalo to play the 4-0 Bills. And with very low expectations of victory, the underdog Saints managed to play their best half of football this season. They were down only 14-10 at halftime. But while making progress in some areas, they still ultimately lose by a convincing 31-19 score. Now, there are only wins and losses in the NFL. There's no moral victories. But there are some signals from this game that the 0-4 Saints are making some positive strides towards the future. At least I think so. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. There's no clear sign that the Saints made some progress in this game because as I'm taking game day notes, this is the first time I've been able to go double digit pages front and back on some of them through 4 quarters of football that the Saints have played. The key stress here is progress, not perfect. Far from it. I don't want to get overly excited, but I think the Saints earned some respect in this game by how hard they played and overcoming some of their let's face it, for 12 quarters previously were major issues. Some of them still exist, but for the most part, they cleaned up some very important ones, especially in that first half. One of the things we needed to do, which has been stressed repeatedly, is weeks 1 through 3, and this goes back years with the Saints. Too many penalties, especially the pre-snap, kill your drive or keep their drive alive variety. First half, you only had 2 penalties for 26 yards, and none of them were pre-snap. One of them was an intentional grounding by Rattler. One of them was a penalty on special teams. In the second half, 2 penalties for 15 yards, both on special team. One was roughing the punter. That's your 15 yards. Then we had a kick out of bounds, or rather missed the kicking box. So no yards are assessed. The ball's just moved to the 40, but it's charged as a penalty. Meanwhile, you let the Bills make all kind of mistakes. They flagged 11 times, 55 yards, but they did have a ton of pre-snap problems on both sides of the ball. Look, you let the other team, I don't care how good they are, and make no mistake, that's a very good football team. But you let them make the multiple of those mistakes and you don't commit them yourself. That's one of the ways you can play a team that, look, perfectly honest, better quarterback, better offensive line, probably a better defense except for their run defense, and explosive playmakers all over the field. And you saw that on Sunday. You're only down 4 with a chance to take the lead at the end of the half. Didn't quite work out, but you put yourself in that position by cleaning up this penalty issue. The other thing is keep hopping on. Look, you got to take advantage of your opportunities, and we still had some missed opportunities in this game. But third down efficiency, especially in the first half, was much better because we converted at 43%. We were 3 of 7. They only converted 1 of 4, 25%. You have to be on the right side of that where your offense is converting more than theirs. Your defense has got to step up and make some stops. They did in that first half on Sunday. Rushing, this was a big one. It was like, we don't have a chance unless we can do something in the rushing game. First half, we had 21 carries for 117 yards, 5.6 average. If we can do that every game, we're going to be in every game and we're going to win some of them. And some of these stats I'm rolling out right now, as far as the penalties, and now that we're talking about rushing stats, you do that at the first 2 games at home, we're likely 2-2 right now. You do that in Seattle last week, I don't think we win that game, but you're going to see something that was closer to what you saw yesterday instead of that debacle we had 8 days ago. Bills, you did a great job of defending the run, at least in the first half. They were 15 for 59, 3.9 average, keeping them under 4. Time of possession, you were right there with them. 14 minutes and 7 seconds to their 15 minutes and 53. It's a little less than 2 minutes advantage to them. That's okay, considering some of the abysmal showings we had in time of possession at various points during the season. You took advantage of opportunities to make big plays, both in the running game and the passing game in the first half. You got a plus 20 yard, really explosive on that and on third down to convert. Rattler scramble for 20 yards. You kept hitting some 10 plus yard plays. Johnson had a 17-yard catch. Miller with an incredibly good 18-yard touchdown run. Kamara had a 17-yard run. Shaheed, 11-yard catch. Miller, another 13-yard run. All stuff you were doing in 5 drives. You managed 6. 10 plus. And I can tell you that we were struggling to find those in these first 3 games. We hit 6. Even the defense was stepping up and making plays. You had 2 run stuffs of 0 yards. The interception by Sanker, which was an incredible play. You ended up with 2 sacks to stymie a drive on back-to-back plays. You held the Bills scoreless. That's a top 5 scoring offense. You held them scoreless in the second quarter. Get yourself in that position where you were at the end of the first half. Now, look, again, it was far from perfect as you allowed that 43-yard touchdown catch, and that was a catch and run. And the reason why it was a catch and run, Demario Davis missed a tackle. Jonas Sanker missed a tackle. Kind of game-changing you play right off the bat on that first drive you allowed by missing tackles. Wasn't perfect. The second drive, you gave up two big catches to Coleman for 17 and 19. They end up scoring because after that, I mean, you were limiting their big plays, but they were grabbing 5, 6, 5, 8 yards on running plays to Cook, culminating with the 1-yard touchdown run. So overall, you hung in there. You really stepped it up after those first 2 drives in the first half, or the Buffalo's first 2 drives in the first half, one of which you put your big boy pants on and you responded immediately by marching down the field on the road on your first possession and finally scoring a touchdown. Very good things. Like I said, not perfect, missed opportunities on offense, some shaky plays on defense, especially those first 2 drives, but you recovered because that game could have spun out of control. After they go touchdown, we answer touchdown, and they go touchdown. Just no. You put the brakes on. You held it under control. Second half, little different story, but you have to acknowledge that's a good football team over there. There's a really good football team, and if they clean up their defending the run problem, that looks like a team that could stay healthy and end up playing in February in the Super Bowl with a great chance of winning it. But you hit 6 more 10-plus yard plays in the second half. Kamara, Rattler, Kamara again, all 10-plus yard runs. Miller had a 12-yard catch. Olave a 10-yard catch. Shaheed a 14-yard catch. Saints defense did not play a good third quarter, and that was kind of the undoing. But they kind of recovered a little bit in the fourth quarter and did their best to keep it close. Because that's where you had a couple run stuffs there, one of them for negative 1 yard on fourth down to stop a conversion. You grabbed a sack. Overall, special teams were tremendously better than a week ago. And Kroger, man, he nailed 2 beautiful punts. And one inside the 15 that was down to the 13, one inside the 5 down to the 3 that was both in the second quarter, really jammed up Buffalo's offense and allowed our defense to recover. And that's how you can hold an offense like that to 0 points in the quarter. Groupie 2 for 2, including banging the 54-yarder, was good up until they both had one misstep, both kind of costly. Groupie, of course, missing the kicking box, and that gave them great field position. They rolled down, scored. And Kruger did have one punt with a chance to down it again inside the 20 and kind of caught too much of it, put it in the end zone for a touchback. Overall, the coverage was good all day on special teams. Didn't give up any explosive plays in that. Couple correctable mistakes, and your special teams probably grades out really, really high. Like I said, not perfect on the day. because they recovered somewhat in the second half, stepped it up. We did not play as well in the second half as we did in the first half, but it still wasn't awful. Just against a team like that, it's just not going to be enough to keep them from separating what they ultimately did. But you kind of looking at some of those key stats I mentioned in the last video. I'll try to put it up here. Look, total yards, they got you plus 58 on the day, 356 to our 298. Penalties, like I said, we only had 4, they had 11. Hit us for 41 yards, they for 55 yards. Your time of possession for the game finished. They had it for 31 minutes, 21 seconds. We had it for 28 minutes, 39 seconds. You were still hanging in there right where you needed to be. Scoring, obviously, they beat us by 12, 31-19. Got that separation in the second half just because some of the stuff you did in the first half really good tapered off a little bit because you ended up on third down 5 of 13 for 38% for the game. 3 for 10, 30% for them. So you still did a better job on third down conversions. You just kind of, and part of that grain of salt is late in the game when we were trying to come back, when we were getting in third down situations, they knowing we had to throw the ball even though it was fourth down, they were coming and it was creating problems. But still, you could have got that north of 40, kept it north of 40, and approach 50, get a little better from the first quarter to the second quarter instead of not quite as good. You would be in that one score chance you might have had to pull a game out, and everything's different once you get it to that. Turnover margin on the day was even. Both teams threw an interception, and both interceptions came on really good play by each team's free safety. So looking at the second half on its own, they had a 50-yard advantage in total yards, 198 to 138. We had advantage in penalties, 2 to their 5. Both of them, unfortunately, were game-changing type of penalties. Time of possession in the second half, 15:28 for them, 14:32 for us. So we kind of actually closed the gap a little bit in the second half there. Individually on third down, both teams were actually 33% on offense. We were 2 for 6. They were 2 for 6. Rushing, we were 13 for 72, 5.5. And because of that separation in the scoring, we had to abandon it a little early. So if you can keep it close and keep running the ball, you really have a chance. They recovered in a big way, 17 for 106 for 6.2 average. Like they went in there and said, no, we're going to run the ball on this defense. And look, Cook is a great running back. They did a good job of getting space for him, and he ran through it. Red zone, looking only at touchdowns, we were 1 for 2. And the other one was the interception on the trick play. Um, I'm sorry, 1 for 2 in the second half was the had to go for it on fourth down. They were 0 for 1 and ended up with a field goal. So the trick play happened at the end of the second half. That was our one red zone miss in the first half. So you were, it was important. We had to score touchdowns and not kick field goals in this game. Most part, you did that. You could have done it a little better, but I can't be unhappy that we managed to get some touchdowns in the end zone multiple times in a game instead of getting one and then trying to win with groupie field goals. So I do see that as an improvement, but you're going to have to keep building on these things that you did well in that first half. They have to get better. And that at the end, when we get to more work to do, there's some stuff that we're going to talk about that was just absolutely not good at all. And if you'd have cleaned that up just a little bit, because there was still some reoccurring problems from the previous weeks, you clean that up just a little bit, half as good as you cleaned up the stuff that you did really well, man, we might really be having a different conversation this morning. I think we saw some progress from some young players yesterday, all on first year rookie deals. So that's why it's kind of important to get these guys to progress and get better. So can we rely on them in the future, or are they just kind of filling in for the next year or two while we try to find someone better because they are where they are. Five of them kind of stood out to me yesterday, and PFF grades have just dropped. I had Kendre Miller. Oh, and in the first segment, I'll try to remember to drop a note, but I think I said he had a 14-yard catch in the second half when in fact it was a run. Sorry. But he finished 11 for 65 in the running game with touchdown. Overall, that 82.8, 72.5 run grade, good stuff to build off of. We know what he's capable of. What he brings to the table is a harder style runner, yards after contact type guy. Very important to have a guy like this. He's a chain mover in the offense, and if you don't get him to the ground like he showed on that 18-yard touchdown run, he can hurt you. So glad to see that. We'll we'll see how this plays out over the rest of the year. But if he can stay healthy and keep establishing, you know, 6 yards to carry, making the tough runs and get balls into the end zone, you got something there. Torricelli Simpkins or Torricelli Simpkins, look, came in, had to come in cold when Ruiz went down. Who, oddly enough, his PFF grades, he was actually having a pretty good game after three terrible games in a row. But he goes down with the ankle issue. No telling how long he's going to be out. You call on Simpkins. 61.3 overall grade. His run block, 63.4, 63.5. Pretty decent numbers. I'll take that, especially, and that's why I mentioned Ruiz. Outside of Ruiz before he got injured, those numbers were higher than just about anything Ruiz put up in the previous 3 weeks. Pass blocking more in line with Ruiz was 48.7. So, like we said, not everything's perfect. There's something circled. Let's keep improving that run blocking and that overall, and it will go up if you get a jump on better pass blocking. Defensively, obviously Jonas Sanker, 85 overall, outstanding, 87.6 in coverage, and he would have graded higher. He would have been in the vaunted 90 plus deep blue that you want to see grades on your PFF grades on your players, except he had 5 missed tackles. And the first of which, as we mentioned earlier, was the last chance to get Shaker on the ground before he ran the final 30 whatever yards for the touchdown on that opening drive for Buffalo. So he got hit hard with his tackle grade, and rightfully so, because overall, that's definitely in the more work to do category for the whole team. We had 13 of them missed tackles on Sunday, and like I said, he had 5. But again, something that's fixable, improve on it, and keep doing what you're doing on that back end. The progress he's made since he's had to take over week 2 is leaps and bounds, which is why I'm going to bring up a second rookie in Quincy Riley, whose snaps went up to 24 this week on defense. Yidam only had 12. Riley came in on PFF grade 61.9 overall. His run defense 67.2, a little better than his pass defense of 58.6. I hate to say this, that's consistently higher than what Yadam's been putting up the last couple of weeks. He may have to be a little like Jonas Sanker, and they get to ease him in instead of having to throw him in like we did with Sanker because of the injury to Blackman. But I'm looking at this going, we may have a second rookie that's earning his playing time to go out there. And it was mentioned when we drafted him that he was going to be an NFL starting corner one day, and he had a really good chance of doing it as a rookie this year. He's on his way. It's a guy we got to keep an eye on, but he's got to keep getting better. Christian Boyd, who was finally active, and in post game, it sounds like he had a little nagging injury. That's why he's been inactive. Gets 21 snaps. This is one I can't figure out because you can't help but notice when he's on the field. He's really big dude. Um, and I thought overall he was way better than average. And overall, Not according to PFF's grade. They have him at a 47.6. But this is what I can't figure out. In the three individual quarter categories where he had grades, he was 50.4 in run defense, 65.9 in tackling, and his pass rush grade was 54.1. So I can't understand how a 50, a 65, nearly a 66, and a 54 average out to 47.6. But that's the way PFF had it graded. And again, I think he's more in the line of we, we gave him almost no chance last year in his rookie year. So it's almost like this is his rookie year 2.0, trying to work him in and seeing that size, what he can bring to the table, what he can do with this team. And there's some other like individual grades in there. Some of our, let's just call it rookie contract players, all within their first year on their first deals here and there have been sprinkled in throughout the weeks. So getting to the point where some of these veterans, and I hate to pick on Isaac, but or Ruiz up until the first couple of quarters of yesterday, going, we have a rookie that is outplaying them or playing equally. I think more and more we have to start looking at going, okay, let's move them in more opportunities. And if they keep living up to it, you may have to go that route. And this is about developing young players, but it's also going, if your young players are outplaying your veterans, it's kind of a no brainer, isn't it? More work to do? Absolutely. I think clearly the missed tackles at 13. Okay. Um, keep doing the work you're doing on cleaning up the penalties and keeping that low, making some big plays and explosive plays. And that stuff is good, but you got more work to do. The missed tackles at 13. Come on. Got to get better at that. The big play opportunities you miss, like some game changing potential plays, none more so than Rattler missing wide open cooks. I realize it was a tight window of we've all seen that play, but if you want to be the franchise quarterback of the future, grow into that, whatever, that's a throw. You got to make it in that situation, especially on the road with the chance to really put some pressure back on Buffalo like you did in the second quarter of that game. That would have went a long way to it. And that wasn't the only one. We've had some other ones spread around, but that's just the most obvious one I can point to that everybody knows what I'm referring to. Got to get better at that stuff and eliminating the game changing plays. You make a couple tackles on Shaker, hold him to a 6, 7, 8 yard gain, less than 10 or at 10 on that play instead of giving him the 30 plus that you did after the two misses. Could we have a game changing situation there? They were sprinkled, like I said, throughout the game, and we had some opportunities. And in all fairness, we did make some. I can tell you one right now was Rattler's 20-yard scramble in the first drive. We don't pick up that big play right there. We're punting, and there's no telling. You could have been on the verge of a repeat in Seattle at that point. So I'm encouraged, but and I think rightfully so. I think as hard as they fought, they earned the respect of you went in and did something with a young team with all kind of known issues that the NFL really knows that you have. You overcame some, you got yourself in a fight on a road in a tough place to play. I don't want to say you almost pulled it out, but you could have really certainly made it interesting coming down the stretch and picking up one or two more of those game-changing plays might have made the difference. But the final score, I think, is not necessarily indicative of how close that game was through the first half, and at times tightened up a little bit the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth, in there for a little while before, and I'm going to end it this way. Ultimately, the better team overcame their issues and won. That's the game of football. So, not a moral victory. We don't believe in them, right? It is a loss. But I think you've got some stuff trending up, and keep that fixed. Move on to the stuff that you need to fix and get that trending up. Get better every week. Get these young players to develop. And when they earn the playing time to get out on the field, keep developing them on that field on game day. I think some of them are going to start making you the big plays we need on defense. See Sanker on the interception. So that's what we got for you so far today. Going to do some film review later in the week. Look, let me know any other young players you thought stood out. Drop them in the comments. And I think there were flashes of some other guys that did some really good stuff in there. You know, what what did you find in this game? Is there anything in there where you go, yes, that's something we can build on, in addition to the things I mentioned? Because I think there's some more hidden in there. And watching some film, I expect to find some. There's probably a few more going, maybe not as been as well as we thought. I'm sitting there looking at Christian Boyd's grade going, it just don't make sense. But, we'll see how it plays out. Let me know what you think down in the comments. First time here, you like what you saw, please hit the like, share, subscribe. I'll have a pinned comment down there. Try to keep checking in daily, or multiple times daily if I can. Respond to your comments and see what you guys got down there. Your guys and gals, excuse me, have down there. So where we're sitting, film review coming up in the middle of the week, and we're going to get ready for the Giants game. And I'm going to say this before signing this thing off. If you give a first half effort for the whole game at home against the Giants on Sunday, you might just get that first win of the season. And now we can start thinking about, okay, we went through the 4-game losing streak. Let's try to build a winning streak with the next couple of games we got coming up. Not to look too far ahead. Take care of the Giants first. We'll deal with that at the end of the week. So I'll see you next time. I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.